Ratatouille is one of those Pixar movies that really radiates with untold backstories. Why does Alfredo Linguini have an American accent in France, and Anton Ego a British one? Who is the woman at the beginning of the film? How does Remy control Linguini? I've had unbelievable amounts of fun with these questions, and in my opinion, formed one of my best videos. But unfortunately, it had a robot voice speaking over it, it had certain parts that made no sense, and certain parts that were debunked. Oh dear, we can't have that. So today I'm bringing you a revised theory, where I take an older video of mine and improve it. Hello, I'm the Theorizer, and this is my most exciting movie to cover. I love it. Let's do this. Right now, I will be going over all of the evidence I concluded in the original video, and discuss my theory in a better way. But before I start, a couple of months ago, the Super Carlin brothers made quite a similar video to mine, but I won't deviate into their conclusion. I will stay within my original boundaries. Anton Ego is a food critic who has a very tragic, but entirely untouched upon, backstory. This is the main point I made in my original video, but after what I found today, I am retracting that statement to make a new one. Anton Ego has an extremely tragic past, more so than I previously believed, and this newer, more tragic solution fits without anything that I can see to debunk it. Anton Ego's mother, in his flashback scene, is the exact same woman from the beginning of the film. Boom. Why? Let me explain in great detail why I have concluded this to be the case. This flashback has an umbrella leaned up against a wall, a reference to the one Mabel mistakes for a shotgun. By the way, this old lady's confirmed name is Mabel. Both houses have a chair with absolutely identical patterns, the exact same structures, and very similar styles, but these pieces of evidence are only skimming the surface. The cabinet they both have has identically patterned doors, and the structure is completely identical. Just look at them. Look! Stoves? Very close to the same. The structure of the fireplaces in both houses are the exact same. It goes up, out, curves, up, bar across the top, bar going vertically inside, they're the exact same. What really confirms the fireplaces, though, are the curtain thingies that go across the top. They are the same in both places. This isn't the kind of thing that's a coincidence. Want more proof of this? Anton Ego's silhouette is found right there on her wall, with his pointy head, protruding nose, and teeny tiny glasses. The floor in their houses are identical, with red and brown hexagonal patterns. The same goes for the matte colors and patterns, wall colors, and door styles and colors. If you got $1 million for every time I said identical, you'd be a millionaire. Okay, I suppose that's a stupid comparison, but nonetheless, they're identical. And you could argue that Pixar is just reusing similar models to save animating time, but one, this is Pixar we're dealing with, and two, there are far too many similarities for it all to be this coincidental. Also, on the wall next to Anton's silhouette, there is a framed image of a young Mabel and a husband. The young Mabel looks identical to Mrs. Ego. They live on a farm in rural France, with a rock wall along the inner yard, just like in Mabel's yard. Also outside, they have identically placed and colored oak trees, which by the way do grow in rural France. The vines that grow around the doorway are the same at the old woman's house. The worn-in pathway outside her front door is the same. All of it. The only difference that is noticeable is that the house appears to be entirely mirrored from the flashback. What is the symbolism behind that? I didn't know before in my last video, but I do now, and I'll get into that in a minute. The genetics comparing Mabel to Ego are on point. The eye colors, hair colors, earlobes, handedness, and everything else is similar. Mabel also has the same genes as Anton's mom, the same ears, eyes, hair color, and handedness. This makes them more likely than not to be the same person. The timing matches up excellently as well. Ego is in his 50s, this woman is in her 80s. This Ego is around 10 in the flashback, this mother is in her 30s, as apparent by her generalized features. Perfect timing for her to be a mother to him. Like, it couldn't be more perfect. So, I can conclusively say that Mabel is the legitimate mother of Anton Ego, but how does this amazing revelation change the whole flow of the story? Well, there is lots more to cover, including that terribly sad part I am promising. Mabel is obsessed with GUSTEAU. His books, his cooking, everything he has. Mabel's wedding picture portrays the groom as a large man with facial features that match, you guessed it, GUSTEAU. So is Mabel's husband GUSTEAU? And this is where things get extremely awesome. But unfortunately, this was the only part of my theory that was debunked, because A, Linguini's mother is named Renata, not Mabel, and, GUSTEAU is his father, so it wouldn't really work there. B, Renata died, unlike Mabel, who is alive and ticking. So the only solution is that they aren't the same person. So then, how does it all work? In my original theory, I made the major claim that they were the same person, but their different names go against this, and hard. I thought I was so close, but still too far. Fortunately, things clicked right back into place as I began writing this script. Here is my conclusion. GUSTEAU and Mabel had a child, Anton. The genetics match up perfectly when it comes to GUSTEAU and Ego. Some time then passes, and GUSTEAU leaves Mabel for Renata, whom he becomes the boyfriend of. But Mabel loved him to an obsessive point, and she continued to obsess over his shows and cookbooks. She is old and crazy. Accidentally, Renata and GUSTEAU had Linguini, but Renata never told GUSTEAU, as they say in the film. And this is why Ego hates both Linguini and GUSTEAU, because GUSTEAU left his mom for a newer model, but then GUSTEAU created a replacement to what Anton was supposed to be, his father's successor. Feel that? Your perception of reality just blew apart into trillions of subatomic pieces. Anton's hatred of his father makes his critical opinion very biased, and he subtracts a star from their restaurant. This depressing moment is when GUSTEAU can't handle it anymore. His own son has broken his heart, and GUSTEAU dies. There's no way a chef would die from a bad review. But all of this piled up, and his son reviews him badly? That's the cherry on top of a crappy situation. GUSTEAU dies. At the end of Ratatouille, Ego says that he finally realizes what GUSTEAU meant when he said that anyone can cook. This means that he has known him for a very long time. Renata probably disliked Ego for being the son of a previous woman, and then hated him for killing her boyfriend. She never revealed any of this in her letter to Skinner. In her eyes, and possibly Mabel's, Ego was a disgrace to both women, inadvertently killing his own father with little to no remorse. And why didn't she reveal to GUSTEAU that she had Linguini? He already had a son. It would have been a bit too much to take in. As we see, he dies easily. Gotta be careful there with those shocking reveals. The only one who knew any of this was Ego. This is the reason he despises GUSTEAU and really hates Linguini. Linguini, without even knowing it, made Anton jealous. Ego shows it. His last name is not GUSTEAU because he left them and changed it. As we have already established, he wanted to be as far away as possible from them. He changed his last name to remind himself of his father's uncontrollable ego, GUSTEAU. Darker and far less jolly than meets the eye. But he remains in the food business, being a highly respected critic. Anyone can cook, a motto meant for Ego, but that's only a possibility. And finally, what I believe to be the crowning clue. Ego's mom has the exact same recipe that the restaurant has for Ratatouille. Exact same? How odd. How specific that they named this movie Ratatouille. Why that? Surely not just because it's a dish they made, but it's because of the impact it has on this broken family, reuniting the once perfect little bunch. Anton Ego, a food critic driven by the betrayal of his father, the insanity of his mother, the arrogance of his father's new girl, and the jealousy of his half-brother. A man who only wanted a family, but it all fell apart when fame hit them like a freight train. GUSTEAU succumbed to another woman. Boom. Small family crumbles apart. This is like literally the opposite of the conclusion in my last video. Pixar builds a happily divorced family, and then a wickedly divorced family. It's very sad when you think about it. And we know from all of the deleted scenes that GUSTEAU wasn't just depressed from the review, he was an all-around depressed and angered man. Jolly at times, but unpredictable at others. He has no reason to act this way. He has a great life, or so we're led to believe. These scenes actually caught me off guard at first, but now they don't. They support my theory, and now we know why GUSTEAU is a sad guy. Not a bad guy, just a sad guy. Finally, that point I made about his mirrored memory. Why is it flipped? Well, Anton has led a pessimistic life full of hatred. I mean, it isn't like you can actually blame him, but still, he has lived it nonetheless. He's like the anti-GUSTEAU, extremely thin and dark, while GUSTEAU is extremely fat and jolly. Jack Skellington Santa Claus, you may say. And yes, that's a nod to a future theory I may be doing. Anyways, his mirrored memory. Mirrors symbolize countless things, but most prominently, they symbolize self-evaluation and reflection when dealing with the consequences of your actions. Ego has plenty to reflect on. His killing of his father, his amplified pessimism, his life. His whole life is something to reflect upon. For God's sake, his workplace is shaped like a coffin, and he looks like a stick figure. Too much guilt, only something to fuel the fire. Reflection. I'm starting to think that the only not sad thing to come out of this movie's backstory is the fact that Colette and Linguini's new restaurant is now world famous. You can tell it's famous if Riley's mother reads about it. Now that we've covered every single thing that there is to cover, it's time for me to make the one, the only, timeline. Because if you're still worried about the timing of all of this, don't worry, it checks out perfectly. Ratatouille is one of those Pixar movies that takes place right when it's released, so 2007. This means that when we go all the way to the start of our timeline, GUSTEAU and Mabel are born in the year 1927, or sometime around there. They get married at an unspecified point quite some time later. When they're around their mid-20s, they have a child named Anton. He is born around the year 1952. All of these dates are calculated estimates, by the way. Renata is also born, sometime between GUSTEAU and Anton's births. After Anton gets a little bit older, his father leaves Mabel for Renata, who becomes his girlfriend. This makes Mabel forever obsessed with the tolling loss of her husband, and naturally it infuriates Anton. But what really sets him off is when he learns that his father's girlfriend has a child. His father doesn't know. The birth of Linguini in around 1972 gives Anton a definite reason to have a personal vendetta against that family and the restaurant. He poorly reviews his father's meal and kills him accidentally. He always goes on about how he doesn't think anyone can cook, and it's simply an exaggerated and understandably biased response. GUSTEAU's death is anywhere from 0 to 15 years after Linguini's birth, so GUSTEAU died at age around 55 to 70. 15 to 20 years after his death, Renata dies too, and Linguini begins working at the restaurant in 2007. It all fits. This is why I love Ratatouille. If you haven't watched my other Ratatouille video, yes, I have yet another one, I discussed how GUSTEAU too could have been controlled by a rat. And now, I have this theory to fuel that one. GUSTEAU lived on a rural farm initially, the same farm that Remy's dad has lived on. Is it possible that Remy's dad loved cooking and GUSTEAU betrayed him after a tragic breakup? It would be why the dad is so vengeful. I illegitimately diagnosed Linguini with autonomic dysreflexia, and it is hereditary, and Skinner's lawyer said that he found a rodent hair in GUSTEAU's chef hat. So, this may be for another day. There is so much more that this movie has to offer, and all I've done so far is cover the human aspect. Soon, in a while, we'll cover the rat aspect in more detail and revise that other theory I have. Thanks so much for watching my crazy ideas. Here are some other recent videos you can click to watch, here's my social media, and here are my channels you can subscribe to. Until next time, I'm the Theorizer.